Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? The Saints have updated their depth chart. And on the new depth chart, Taysom Hill is not listed at quarterback. Excuse me. Taysom Hill is not listed at tight end. He is, however, listed at quarterback. That's interesting. And it might actually just be a really adept play to a loophole on the emergency quarterback rule. Here was Dennis Allen on Monday when asked about Taysom Hill's quarterback designation.
Taysom took, I think, about almost 50% of his snaps last year at the quarterback position. So I don't know that there's anything really to that other than he kind of plays a lot of different positions.
Oh,
we just listed him there.
Oh, really? I would like to remind you that the NFL has a new rule in place whereby a team can keep an emergency quarterback on the 53-man roster, and have them active for game day, but not count against the game day active. So your emergency quarterback has to count against the 53, but doesn't count against your actives on game day. So follow me here. If you're the New Orleans Saints, you go into a game week, Derek Carr is your starter, Taysom Hill is listed as a quarterback, but is playing the Taysom Hill role. If something were to happen to Derek Carr, Taysom plays quarterback. If something in turn were then to happen to Taysom, Jameis would come in as your emergency quarterback. So you could essentially have Jameis dressed and ready as your emergency option, as opposed to having Jake Haener as your emergency option on game day. Haener, in this instance, could just be a healthy scratch on game day. It is a very interesting way to approach the loophole. Remember, I had tipped to Jeff Duncan because he was so close, man. Jeff was here before the final 53 roster cuts happened, the final roster cuts to get to 53. And remember, Jeff Duncan said this.
Derek Carr has shown that he's incredibly durable in his 9-year career. Winston has not had a good camp in any way. He's had a few flash plays in preseason, but you have the luxury of Taysom Hill on the roster. If you did, heaven forbid, have to replace Carr because of injury, you've got a guy that's proven he's won in the league as a starting quarterback, a veteran.
So, and he elaborated a bit, but the whole point was, he was saying, do you cut Jameis because you could keep Haener as the 2 and you've got Taysom as a 3, but he missed it, but he was so close. But ultimately, what the Saints are doing here is they're setting up a scenario where you could have Jameis dressed on game day, but not count against the 48-man limit that are allowed to dress on game day. Now, here's the tricky part. Let's say hypothetically, and knock on Formica, you don't want anything to happen to Derek Carr, but if something did happen to Derek Carr under this scenario, if Jameis were your emergency quarterback, if something happened to Carr, then Taysom would have to go in the game at quarterback. Jameis could only play as your number 3 in an emergency situation, which is better than having Haener in an emergency situation. But I'll remind you, the reason that's tough is because go in the Wayback Machine with me to 2020. It was Drew Brees' final year in the NFL. You had Jameis on the roster. You had Taysom as well. And Brees got hurt in that game against San Francisco. And Jameis came in and replaced him. Well, the next week, Taysom was the starting quarterback. Because if you remember, so they spent the game week with Taysom and they put in the game plan with Taysom in his Taysom role, and Jameis was the backup. Well, when Brees was injured, Taysom became the starter, and so the whole preparation that week was with Taysom as the starter and Jameis as the backup. So, in essence, if you do follow this sort of loophole, and have Taysom as your number 2 quarterback, that means he would be spending the week preparing as Taysom, right, in his Taysom role, but then in a game situation would have to go in at quarterback, which is not something that they've done in the past. Typically, your backup would go in as your number 2. So maybe not the best scenario. None of these are ideal scenarios, but it's one of those things where Taysom Hill, being who he is, does kind of give you a funky loophole to the third quarterback emergency quarterback rule. So something worth following. Dennis Allen, look, a slide by Dennis Allen there. I don't think there's anything to it. Played half his snaps last year at quarterback. Okay, friend. Not buying it. Tricky. Never thought of that New Orleans hat tip to you. Give you a little wink. A little wink. A wink and a nod. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.